So in today's video, we're going to be making a one-page reactive e-commerce site that actually makes quite a bit of money. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources that I mention on this channel, all the apps that I make, you will be able to get access to them, meaning you'll be able to view and or clone them via my Patreon page. And if you're still not a member of our amazing, rapidly growing Patreon community, then you can learn more about it using the link in the description below the video. Now, the other day I was reading an article titled "How an Ugly Single-Page Website Makes $5,000 a Month with Affiliate Marketing." Okay, so here's an article that you can read yourself. And the website that they're talking about is this website at discprices.com. And if you open up this website, this is what you see. So as you can see, it's not a very beautiful website, right? It's not a very high-tech website, right? You can call it an ugly website if you want, but it serves its purpose because on the left-hand side, we have various filters, right? Various ways that we can narrow down the kinds of products that we're looking for. Where on the right-hand side, we see all the products. So for instance, I can change the data source. So let's say I want to look at Amazon in Spain. So I can click here and I can see the various products. In this case, these are hard disks available at Amazon Spain. If I want to switch to Amazon France, I can click here. And now as you can see, these are the French source products here. Okay, I can also switch the conditions. So let's say I only want to see new. Okay, I can just unclick used. If I want to see both, I can click both. I can unclick new, or I can check both of these and I'll be able to see both new and used. Here I can switch if I want to see price per terabyte or price per gigabyte. Okay, so as you can see right now, it's price per terabyte. So this is a good metric to compare these products, right? Or I can switch to price per gigabyte. So there's the price per gigabyte and I can see it. I can switch back to terabyte and now I'm seeing the values. I can also filter by capacity, so minimum, maximum. Let's say I'm only interested in, disk drives from 2 terabytes to, let's say, 10 terabytes. Okay, and as soon as I do it, it refreshes, right? So if I delete that, I have this minimum. If I delete that again, I'm looking at basically everything. And it's the same case for these other filters. So things like rotational, solid state, removable, optical, and tape. Now, let's think about some of the things that make this website special. Okay, what makes it stand apart from some of the other websites or apps? Well, first of all, this is a one-page website. Okay, there are no multiple pages. It's not like with Amazon or some of these other sites where you're browsing by categories, you're browsing by different parameters, you're reading reviews. This is very, very simple. It's basically a list of products, a list of items that you can filter via filters here. And it's also reactive, right? So the minute I change something, it automatically updates. Okay, you don't need to press refresh. You don't need to press a button. You don't need to do anything. So that's pretty much it, right? There are a couple of things here. It's one page, right? You don't need to navigate. And it's got filtering that once you change some of these filters, you change some of these options, it automatically refreshes, right? So it's reactive. And here you can click on the link and you're going to be redirected to Amazon. Okay, so these are all Amazon links in that specific Amazon site in that specific country, right? So if I go to, let's say, Amazon Canada, these are going to link to Amazon Canada. So depending on where you are, you can select it and you're going to be seeing the links that point to that specific Amazon store in that specific country. And so at first glance, you may be thinking, oh, this is an ugly site, nobody uses it. But now that I've used it for a couple of minutes, I find it actually pretty easy to use and very helpful, as well as fairly intuitive, right? This is a site that I can quickly come to and quickly find what I'm looking for. And that's also probably the case with lots of other people. And as a result, this site is fairly popular and it also makes a good chunk of money as well. And now let's go ahead and build out this site in FlutterFlow, which is my favorite no-code builder. And actually, you may be thinking that it's pretty easy to build out a site such as this one in FlutterFlow, but that's actually not the case. As you're going to be seeing a little bit later in the video, there's a bunch of gotchas that you need to be aware of. And so as I'm going to be building out the site, you're going to be learning some interesting tips and tricks that you can use whether you want to build a site such as this one or any other site that needs to be very dynamic, that needs to be very responsive. Now, before we jump into FlutterFlow and start building out the site, you want to be thinking about where we're going to be storing this data, right? We need to store this data somewhere so that we can display it to the user. And I recommend that we store it in Supabase, which is my favorite backend because it does lots and lots of things and does it really, really well. And it's also very, very easy to use. And so here I am inside of my Supabase dashboard. I'm using one of the projects here. And as you can see, I don't have any tables. I don't have any views. We are starting from scratch. And so let's go ahead and create a new table called products that we can seed with sample data. So here's our new table. And what kind of fields do we need? Well, if we go back to this website, these are the fields that are being used, okay? So we have a field called price per terabyte. Now, this field is actually a calculated field. It's going to be calculated using a bunch of other fields. In this case, it's going to be calculated using these fields here. And so we can ignore this field for now and create the other fields, okay? So we need a field called price, capacity, warranty, form factor, technology, condition, and the actual link, as well as the name and the link where we are going to be redirected to if we click here. Okay, so as you can see, it has the name here that displays for the link, but it also has a URL underneath. So if you click on this link, if you click here, you're going to be redirected to Amazon. Okay, so let's go ahead and create these fields. So we're going to come here and we're going to start creating fields. So let's start with name. Name is going to be a text. Next, we're going to be creating capacity. Capacity is going to be numeric. Next, we're going to be creating the warranty, and that's also going to be a number. Warranty is going to be a number as well. Next, we want the form factor. That's going to be text, followed by the technology and the condition. Just gonna say tech, and this is gonna be text as well as the condition. Just gonna make it text right here. Next, we also need the link that is going to be used for redirecting the user to the actual e-commerce store, Amazon in this case. This is going to be the link, and here I'm gonna make it text as well. Now, looking at this table, we are missing price, so I'm gonna put price here. This is gonna be numeric, and I'm gonna put it all the way at the top, maybe after name. Next, I'm going to be adding a field that's going to be calculating the price per capacity, okay, so that it's going to make it easier to compare different products. I'm going to call this price per capacity, and this is going to be numeric. And let's go ahead and arrange it. So let's go ahead and put it right here, right after price and capacity here. And this field is going to be calculated automatically by a trigger. So anytime we enter data, or the data is entered manually, or the data is entered via an app, this field is going to be automatically calculated via a trigger. So let's go ahead and save our table here. All right, so now we have our table created. The next thing that we want to do is we want to create this special trigger that will calculate this price per capacity after the data has been entered. Now, there are two ways to add a trigger. We can come here and we can click on triggers and we can create a new trigger. But there's an easier way, in my opinion. And here you want to go into SQL editor and you can just do it by hand. So we're going to open up a new query window here, and we're going to paste a function that I've already created in ChatGPT that will automatically calculate this price per capacity, okay? So we're going to execute this function here, okay? Success, no rows returned. And now that we have this function, we can create the trigger. And that is because a trigger needs a function that it will trigger. And here's the actual trigger that will get triggered before data is inserted or updated, and it's going to execute that function that we have already created. So let's go ahead and run this SQL and install this new trigger here. So as you can see, success, no rows returned. And now if you go into database here, you're going to be seeing not only the triggers, but also the functions as well. So if I select functions, we're going to be seeing this function here, calculate price per capacity, and you can edit it if you want. This is the function here. But also, if you go into triggers, you're going to be seeing this new trigger, right? And as you can see, before insert, update, insert, it's enabled. And here you can edit this trigger, you can change the name, or if you want to change how it works, you need to generate a new SQL and update that trigger. Okay, so now if we enter data, that field, that price per capacity, is going to be calculated automatically. So we're going to go into our table editor, and we're going to try adding a record here so that you can see how it works. So we're going to insert a new row, and let's say the name, let's go ahead and copy this from here. So let's say I go into Amazon.com and I copied this one right here, this first record, copy it here and paste it in here. And let's say the price is, what is the price? The price is $19. So I'm going to put 19. The capacity is, let's say the capacity is 3 terabytes. Everything is in terabytes, so we don't have to worry about, you know, the units. And price per capacity is going to be automatically updated. Okay, so we don't have to worry about this. The warranty, let's say it's 10 years. The form factor is, what's the form? It's internal. Technology is SAS, and condition is used. So we're going to come back here. Internal. SAS, condition is used. And the link is, let's say it's Amazon.com. Okay, we're gonna click save and wait for this record to be created. Okay, so now the record has been created, and as you can see, price per capacity has been automatically calculated for us, and it's 6.333. If we go back to disk prices here, it's also 6.333. And so in our app, we can format it to a specific decimal place. Okay, so we can format it to 2 places probably, because 6.333 kind of doesn't make sense. It should be 6.33 really, right? And that's exactly what we're going to be doing in our app. And so the next thing that we want to do is we want to create some more records here. So maybe create 9 more records, and that way we're going to have 10 records, and then we can start building our app. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on definition. I'm going to select and copy all of this. I'm going to give it to ChatGPT, and I'm going to ask ChatGPT to generate 9 more records for us. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and paste this here. And we're going to ask ChatGPT to generate 9 more records. Generate SQL statements with sample data for inserting into our database. Create 9 records, 9 sample records. Okay, let's go ahead and see what happens. And so ChatGPT is smart enough to understand that we don't need ID and created at, because these are generated fields, and that we also don't need price per capacity because we have a trigger that will automatically calculate that field. And so we're going to take this generated code, copy it, and go back to Supabase, open up a new query, and paste this code here. And we can take a look at it and see if everything is correct. And so as you can see, it has different ways of creating our fields here. Okay, so for instance, for form factor, it decided to use small, medium, large, as opposed to other things, right? So as opposed to internal 3.5, etc., etc. That actually doesn't matter. What matters is the way the app is going to work. Okay, so we're going to go back here, and we are going to run this query and see what happens. Okay, so as you can see, success, no rows returned. That means that the data has been successfully inserted. And if we go back to our tables, go back to products here, we should see 10 records here. Okay, 9 records that were generated plus the first initial record here. So as you can see, this is our first record, and these are the other records here. Okay, and they're rather generic, as you can see, because the system did not know, exactly what kind of data to generate. So as you can see, name is product ABC, and that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. You also can see that price per capacity field that is being generated using our triggers is correctly being generated. It's taking the price here and dividing it by capacity. Okay, so we get price per capacity. 100 divided by 10 is 10. 150 divided by 20 is 7.525, etc., etc. So all of this looks great. We also have the URLs here as well. Okay, so now we have our data in the system, and this means that we are ready to build our app. And so I'm going to jump into FlutterFlow here. I'm already logged into my account. If you do not have an account, you can simply sign up for a free plan. They have a very, very generous free plan that allows you to get started relatively quickly and easily. And so for this, I'm going to come here and I'm going to create a new app and I'm going to call it our ecom app. We're going to do a blank app here. Okay. Now we're going to uncheck this because we're not using Firebase, start building. And the first thing that we want to do is we want to connect this new app here to our Supabase instance. So we're going to click on settings and integration. We're going to scroll down to Supabase, enable Supabase, and now we need two things. We need the API URL and the anon key. And you can get that by going back to your Supabase dashboard, clicking on project settings, API, and copying this URL here. Go back to your app, paste it in here, do the same thing for a non-public. Come back here and paste it in there and click on get schema. And that will allow you to load your schema, right? So you can see exactly all your tables and views. You're going to be seeing them here. And here we can see all the data. And this means that we have successfully connected our blank at this point FlutterFlow app to our Supabase instance. Okay, and so now we can go back here and we can start building the app. Okay, so how does the app look? Well, if we come here, you see that, you know, the filters are on the left hand side here. We have various filters and we have the data here. Okay, so for this, I recommend that we start off with a tablet view. Okay, so this is going to be more of a tablet app, right? There's you know, lots of filters, there's, you know, lots of data, the links, the names, big table, etc., etc. And obviously, you know, you'll be able to view it in a mobile mode as well as the desktop mode. It's just easier to get started in this tablet mode here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and rename this title to, let's say, products, and let's go ahead and start building the app. So what exactly do we need to do? Well, as you can see, we have the main page, and this is essentially a column, and then we have a row, and then we have two more columns. We have this column that takes kind of the minimal amount of space, and then the rest of this, you know, the view of the rest of the screen here is taken up by this column. Okay, and that's important. It's important to make that distinction because when you're going to be building the app, you can specify all that. So we have this column here. Let's go ahead and add a row that's going to be essentially containing everything. And then inside the row, we're going to add two more columns. Okay, and I'm going to duplicate this column. Now we have two more columns. Now what we want to do is for this column, we want it to take the least amount of space. Okay, and for this column, we wanted to take the most amount of space. And so now, as you can see, we have this column that will be controlled by us. All right, we can tell it, you know, how much space, and then this column will take the remaining space. And this is exactly what we want. We don't want 50-50. We want to control one column, and then this column just, you know, it will take the rest of the space. It's going to be greedy. This is the setting. It's a type of expansion setting that allows it to take the most amount of space. If you have this setting, then this setting is not going to be greedy. It's going to be it's going to take as less space as possible with the option to expand. But here we just wanted to take the most space that it can. Now, the next thing that I want to do is before I build the triggers, let's go ahead and display the data. Okay, let's make sure our data is loading up correctly. And so in this next column, in the second column here, we're going to create a list view. And inside the list view, we're going to have a row. And inside the row, we're going to have various text fields representing different columns. Okay, so if you take a look, we have a bunch of columns here. So price per terabyte, price, capacity, warranty, etc., etc. So let's go ahead and display like maybe 3 of these columns just to get started with. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and I'm going to do 3 text fields. Okay, maybe 4. Okay, now as you can see, they're all kind of bunched in together, and we want to space them out. And for that, you can just click on row and you can space them out using this setting. You can also have this setting, but maybe this setting or this setting doesn't really matter. They're all kind of similar. You can also do something like that, which is space between, but that's not what you want to do in this case. I think this is going to work. Space evenly looks good to me. And now we can select list view and we can click here and we can add query and we can click on Supabase, and now we can select our, you know, table products. Click confirm, confirm, and now this list view is being fed this data that we're getting, right? So now for each of the fields, we can display the data. So what do we want to display? Well, price per terabyte, price, capacity, and let's say a name. Okay, we're going to be displaying these later. Okay, so let's go ahead and click here, products row, price per capacity. Okay, let's give it a default value of 0. Hopefully that should never happen. The next field that we want to display is going to be price, followed by capacity, and then name. So let's do price. We can even type it, price. Let's give it a default 0, followed by capacity. You can just type capacity, go ahead and give it 0. And then last but not least is going to be the name. Okay, so we're going to say name, and there is the name. Okay, all right, so now we have 4 fields. One of them is a calculated field that's automatically calculated by a trigger that we created. And now if you run this app, we should at least see those 10 records. So let's go ahead and do that right now. All right, so here's our app. And the problem is nothing is being loaded. Okay, and why is this? Well, 99% of the time, it has to do something with your Supabase permissions. So if we go back to Supabase and we go back to our table editor here, click on the table, we will see that we have no active RLS policies. And because we have RLS turned on, we need to have a policy that allows us to at least read data. So we're going to click here and we're going to create a new policy. We're going to do get started quickly, and we're just going to enable read access to everyone. Okay, this looks good. Review and hit save. Okay, so now this policy is attached to this products table. And now if we reload the app, we should hopefully see data. All right, and there you have it. And now you are seeing data. It's not aligned correctly, but that is not an issue at all. At least you are seeing this data here, okay? It's just a question of aesthetics, right? Making it look nice, but at least the data is there. And before we start working on the filters, let's go ahead and fix these visual issues. So here, let's make it look nice. So if we go back to our app here, as you can see, because of the way that we have it centered, because of the way that we have it aligned, we are experiencing a bunch of issues. So if I click on row here, you see this alignment here. If I click on this and I expand it all the way, let's see what happens. Let's go ahead and reload this and see what happens. All right, and now what you're seeing is these end rows are aligned correctly, but these middle rows are kind of messed up. And so what I recommend doing is I recommend using the following strategy. Is you can go back to row, and what you can do is you can align it left, and then you can control each of the field, right? You can control the space between each of the fields. And so what you can do is you can go to each of the fields and give it a little bit of padding to separate it. So something like maybe 100, maybe something like this. And that usually works fairly well. So if you do something like that, you can even do 150. And so now let's go ahead and reload this, and it should look a lot better. All right, we're almost there. The next thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that it's properly formatting these numbers here, okay? So we're gonna go back here, and this price for capacity, you wanna make sure that it's being correctly formatted. Okay, so we're going to click here and we want to create a formatting. Number formatting, we're going to come here and we're going to be doing this decimal format here. And here you can do automatic, click confirm. And now if you reload it, it's going to look just a tad better. All right, so now that you can see it's a little bit better, there's something else that we can do. We can change the formatting, and we can also do a custom format. So we can come over here. We can do a custom format, and if you click here, you're gonna see various options. So you can copy this right here that you see, come over here, and you can paste that. Here you can remove this. This is not necessary, and you wanna make sure that you remove the quotes as well. Hit confirm, reload your app. All right, so now as you can see, the formatting looks a lot nicer, and the numbers and the values are being aligned a lot better. And a little bit later in the video, I'm going to be showing you a couple of other things that you can do to make it look even better as well. But aligning and visual is not really the main challenge of this app. If you go back to the original web page here, this website, the main thing about this app and the main challenge that if you're building an app such as this in FlutterFlow that you're going to be experiencing is the filtering capabilities, right? Because if you think about all of these are filters, right? So we have this data source, which is a filter. We have a condition, which is a filter. We have this, which is not a filter. It's just the way it changes the values, but this is a filter, right? So if I want to display, let's say 10 from 10 to 15, right? Capacity 10 to 15, it's only going to be displaying these two. If I remove, it's going to be displaying everything. This is another filter. This is a filter. This is a filter. This is, and this. So it's a lot of filters, right? And this is going to be a challenge, building this kind of app with FlutterFlow if you do not watch out for the gotchas. And so before we start building these filters, let's go ahead and actually display them for the user to pick. Okay, so let's go back to our app. And in this column, we're going to be displaying our filters. Okay, so we have a column. And so let's go ahead and add a first filter, which is going to display either new or used products. Okay, so how exactly would we do that? Well, we have this first column here, and what we can do is we can add a checkbox that the user can check on that is going to, display the specific products. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a container here, and inside the container we can add another column, and inside the column we can add many elements, right? One or many elements. And so let's go ahead and search for a checkbox, and let's go ahead and add this one. Okay, here's first, and let's say we want either new or used. So I'm going to duplicate that, and now we have two of them here. Okay, let's go ahead and fix it up. Let's go ahead and make the container a little bit wider. Let's say 200. Okay, that looks better. Okay, that looks better. And let's go ahead and expand or remove the height. We don't need the height. Okay, and here for these checkbox tiles, what we can do is we can remove the subtitle because we don't really need the subtitle, just the title. So I'm going to remove the subtitle, and it's going to look a lot cleaner. Okay, so now we have these tile boxes. Okay, and this is our first kind of option. And so I can come back here and I can say, well, for the title, I want either new or I want used. Okay, and we can also do a little bit of padding on the container. That's why I created a container, because we can pad it nicely. Let's go ahead and do a padding, so something like this, and let's make it rounded corners. Go ahead and do that right now. Border radius, let's make it 5. No, that's too little. This container right here, yeah, let's go ahead and create a width of 1, border radius of 10. So something like this, which is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool effect. And so now the question is, how do we filter? Okay, so let's say the user checks here. How do we filter the values? Well, if you are just starting out with FlutterFlow and you are thinking about it, well, one way that you can do it is by clicking on this list view, coming here, editing the original query, right? If you edit it, you have a filter here. So we can create a filter. And so let's say the user clicks on new, they just want to display the new. And so we can come over here and we can say, well, we want condition to be equal to, whatever, if this checkbox is true or not, right? So we can track that. We can say, well, value is going to be new, and maybe this is conditional depending on this or depending on that. And so you can create these multiple filters, right? You can add a new filter, and potentially what you can do is you can create multiple filters for all of these, right? But that's going to be very, very messy. And I'm going to tell you why. The reason you can't do that is because it's not, there's no easy way to make these filters dynamic. Okay, and what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is if I am working with these filters here, right, I am setting them. But if I select all of these, I'm essentially clearing the filter, right? Let me explain to you again. If I deselect used, I'm only displaying the new. I have an active filter. But if I select used, I don't have a filter because I'm displaying all of them. I need to clear that filter, right? I need to clear the filter. And so here in FlutterFlow, this built-in way, there's no way to clear this filter. So if I create it, it's going to be there, right? There's no way to, kind of make it dynamic, right? This filtering ability is great for very kind of simple cases, if you will. It's not designed for dynamic apps because, these are static filters, right? If I create another filter based on price, great. That filter is going to be there. I can control the value, but I can't remove this filter, which is exactly what I need to do. If I deselect this, if I select it, that filter is gone. I want to display everything. There is no filter. If I deselect it, I'm setting a filter. But if I select it, I am basically clearing the filter. I'm removing the filter. And here, there is no easy way of doing it. Okay, and this is kind of the problem. And so we won't be able to do it like this. We won't be able to do it via a query type, this built-in query type, because these filters are not dynamic. Well, fortunately, Supabase has another way of retrieving this data, and that is via an API. And so if you click on API docs and you click on products, which is our table, and you click on bash here and you even select your key, if you scroll down, you're going to see that you have something called a filtering, right? So you can read all rows, but you can also do filtering, right? And this allows you to set, very powerful filters. Okay, so you can set a bunch of filters, and you can also control the kind of filters that you're working with dynamically. You can do all of that dynamically. And so what you want to do is you want to be using this API to get your data, and you want to be setting these filters dynamically. So let me show you how this works. So let's go back to our app. Click on here, API calls, add API call here. And we're going to say select data or select products. Okay. And let's go ahead and copy our API information here. I'm going to copy this right here, paste it in here. And this is going to be a GET request, I believe. If you come back here, yeah, this is a GET request because there's no body here. And the next thing you want to do is you want to copy your headers here. There are 3 headers here. So we're going to copy that for our app here. We're going to add a header, paste that here, and do the same thing for the other headers, right? Copy this, paste that second header, and last but not least, copy this header here, okay? All right, we're going to click on add call. Now we've saved it. And this specific call gets rows by a specific ID. You see, it says here ID EQ.1, which means that get me all the rows where ID is equal to 1. And this is a select that essentially gets us all the rows. Okay, so if we go into response and test, we should hopefully get one record, and that record is going to be this here, this, whichever record has ID of 1. If we even have that record, we should have that record. This record right here that we created manually, okay? So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to do a test API call, and we are getting that first record here, okay? As you can see, this is that only Amazon, because the other ones are like example. They were generated by ChatGPT. And so this is essentially giving us back one record with ID of 1. Okay, and so this allows us to get our data, but allows us also to set the filter dynamically. So we can create our filters, we can change them on the fly, we can clear them, we can do all kinds of interesting things. And I will show you exactly how you can do that. But before I do, let's go ahead and adapt our app to use the API. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to click on edit, and I'm going to say use API call, select products, and later on we're going to be editing that API call. We're going to be doing it all dynamically. So we're going to be clicking here and setting a bunch of parameters, but right now this is fine. Click confirm, and now you want to click here and you want to generate dynamic children from the results of that API call. Choose response here, and here you just want a JSON body. You don't want anything, because the body that we're getting, the body is essentially a list of objects. So all we need is a body. And here you're going to say item record or something, or actually product item, I like to call it. Hit save. Okay. And now we have that generated thing here. That means that, it's getting multiple pieces of data. And so now if you click here, you're going to be clicking product item. And now you need to create a JSON query. Okay. You need to create a JSON path. And what is going to be the JSON path? Well, for this calculated field, it's going to be, I believe it is called price per capacity. So we're going to go back and we're going to say price per capacity. So per capacity. So this looks good. And then this one, what do we have? What's the next field we have? Is the price, capacity, and then the name. Okay, so let's try that. This is going to be JSON path is price. This is going to be capacity. And last but not least is the name. Okay, come back here. All right, now we have the name, okay? And now let's go ahead and run our app and let's see if it's getting the data correctly and displaying it before we start working on the filters, okay? So we're gonna come back here, we're gonna do a reload. All right, and here's our app. And as you can see, we are seeing that one record. Remember, we are filtering by ID, where ID equals 1. And that gives us back only one record. So we have some, wrapping issues. We still need to format this, okay? We need to format that correctly. But at least we're getting the data. We're getting the data via an API, and we're able to filter it to get exactly what we want, okay? So this is great. So now I can go over here. I can pick my list view. And let's say I want to change, what specific item I'm getting. So let's say I want to remove this filter. I'm going to remove that filter. I'm just going to say select, get me everything, go back here, rebuild my app, and I should hopefully see all the records now because we're not filtering anymore. All right, and now you're seeing all the records here. They're still kind of messed up. We need to fix this. We need to align it, and I'm going to show you some ways that you can fix it. But at least we are now displaying all the data. We are getting all the data successfully. And now the question becomes, well, this is great and all, but how do you filter this data using these things? How can we do this dynamically? How can we filter it, when the user picks or selects or deselects or selects all of them? Well, this is the main challenge of the app. This dynamic filtering is the main challenge you're going to be facing when you're going to be building apps such as this one. And so let's think about how we can do it. Well, first of all, let's go back to our app and let's go ahead and make this query dynamically settable. Okay, so if we come over here, you can pass variables to this query that are going to be dynamically set. Okay, and so we're going to say query here, and now this query is going to be passed via a parameter. Okay, we're going to say query here, and query is just a string. It's not a list. Click save, and that's it. And now we can pass a query dynamically. So if we go into response and test, you need to set the query because right now there's no query. And so what I can do is I can say, well, condition equals to equal new. Okay, and this is a way of telling Supabase that I want to set a filter to display only the products where condition is equal to new. Okay, so let's do a test API call. And now we are getting a list of products. And as you can see, ID is 2, ID is 5, ID is 8. We're not displaying all the products. We're doing filtering and we're doing it dynamically. Okay, so this is the first part of the problem. Okay, it's the ability to pass a filter. Okay, so we can say query, but we can also remove this query. Okay, and we can do a test API call, and now we're not filtering by anything. Right now, we're getting all the values, and you see that was a problem before. That was a problem because once you set those filters in FlutterFlow, they're there forever. They're static filters. They're not controllable at runtime. They're not dynamic. But here, by creating our own filter via this API call in conjunction with this API call, we can do a lot of great things. We can do magic, essentially, because now I can set this filter on a dynamic runtime basis while the app is running. This is very, very powerful. And so this is the first half of the battle. It's being able to pass the filter dynamically and have the system, have the app filter by things, as the user wants. Okay, now the next part of the problem is how do you connect this thing here to this, right? So if I say, well, if I deselect this or if I select this, how do we translate that into something that this API call will understand? Well, this is a slightly more difficult problem. Okay, so let's work through this. Okay, when you are filtering here, you're passing a list of conditions, essentially. For instance, you're gonna say something like, I only want new, or I only want used, or I want used and new, or I want new or used, right? You're basically passing a list of conditions, okay? And so for that, we're going to go into our app store and we're going to create an app state variable called conditions. And this is going to be a list of strings. Okay, each string is going to be a certain condition. Okay, we're going to say create. And how exactly will these conditions look? Okay, what are they going to look like? Well, they're going to look like this. Okay, so we're going to say condition, and then we're going to say new, and then we're going to say equal. Okay, and so this means that condition is equal to new. I can also add another condition. I can say, well, I want condition is equal to you used. Okay, so now we have two conditions. Show me all the new ones or all the used ones, right? It's the same condition, so it automatically becomes or. Okay, so we're saying, show me all the new ones or all the used ones. We can also do something like show me all the new ones and the used ones as well. Okay, but that is not something that you want to do because that's not going to show you anything because there is no one product that has both a new condition and a used condition, right? This needs to be an or, and we're going to take care of all of that as well. Okay, and so another condition you can set is you can do something like source is Amazon.com instead of like Amazon.ca or Amazon.es, etc. You can do equals that, and that becomes another condition. And so these two conditions become an or condition. Okay, because they cannot be, an and condition. Anytime you have the same condition, it automatically needs to become an or condition. So that way we can say, show me all the products that are new or used and all the products with, source Amazon.com. And this way you can create conditions on just about any field and you'll be able to filter all of that correctly. Okay, and so what's going to happen is we're going to have this app state here, which is a list of conditions. And when the user selects the conditions, when they click on something, we are going to be either adding a condition, essentially a string, into our app state, or we are going to be removing it. Okay, so if the user deselects it, we're going to remove it. If the user selects it, we're going to add it. And then when the user finishes picking these conditions, we are going to create that long query string for the API call, using a specific function, and we're automatically going to refresh all of this. And that way, the user will pick their conditions and they'll be able to see the exact data that they want with all the filters set up, okay? So let me show you how this works, okay? So this new checkbox, let's create an action on it, okay? So I'm going to add an action. In fact, I'm going to open this here. And so if the user toggles it on, what we want to do is we want to add a new condition, okay? So we're going to search for app state. We're going to say update app state conditions. That's the only one we have. And we're going to do add to list. We're going to add a condition to list. And the condition is going to be condition new equals. Okay, so this is our condition. And we also want to rebuild the current page. And here we can copy this action, go to toggled off and paste it here. Okay. Now, when the user unchecks it, we want to remove this condition, okay? So what we're going to do is remove from list the same condition. So this is condition new equals, okay? And so when the user toggles it on, we want to add it to the list. If the user toggles off, we want to remove it, okay? And the same thing we want to do for used as well. Okay, so we're going to come into used. In fact, we're going to click here, open the action, the flow editor here. And for toggled on, we're going to paste it. We want to add to list, but in this case, we want to do used. And come back here, paste it here. In this case, we want to delete it. Remove from list, paste it here, and we want to remove used. Okay, and so now we have a bunch of actions that are tied to these new two elements here. And when the user does something, we're essentially manipulating app state. We're either adding conditions or removing conditions. Okay, so we're going to be having various conditions. And one thing that I like to do is I want to be able to debug this, right, as I'm adding conditions. And for that, I'm going to add another text field here so that you can see what's happening above this thing here. Okay, and in fact, let's go ahead and left justify it, something like this. And this thing is going to display the conditions that we have. And for that, I'm going to click here. I'm going to do a code expression because we have a list and we need to convert that list into a string. Okay, we're going to add an argument. This is going to be a list, and this var1 is going to be these conditions that we're passing. And what we want to do is we want to convert that list of strings into one long string. So I'm going to say var1 join and just join on nothing. Check errors. Okay, no errors, confirm. And this thing is going to be displaying the condition. This is only for debugging purposes only. Okay, now at this point, this API has not changed. That's fine. Let's go ahead and run our app and let's at least see if our conditions are being correctly changed, modified. Let's go ahead and reload our app. All right, so here's our app. And as you can see, we have some conditions that are set right now. Okay, so as you can see, we have condition new equals equals, then condition used equal, then condition Amazon equal, okay? And that is because we've set them when we created our app store, app state. We have that here. So I'm going to delete that. So we start off with nothing. We start off with an empty app state. And so now, as you can see, it's completely empty. It is not showing anything. And so if we select this, we have a condition now, condition new equals to. So, and if we select this, now condition used equal to. And if we deselect it, that is gone. If we deselect it, that is gone. So as you can see, these app actions, these events here, they work perfectly. This is exactly what we want. And now that we have these events generating our app state, the last thing that we need to do is we need to generate the query correctly to display this data. We need to be able to generate the right query. And so what we're going to do is we're going to jump back into FlutterFlow. We're going to click on edit. And what we need to do is we need to add a variable called query that is going to be generated from the app state. Okay, and so for that we need a custom function. So we're going to click here and we're going to create a custom function, and this custom function is going to return a string, which is our query string for the API, but it's going to accept a list of strings, and this is going to be called conditions. Okay, and these conditions essentially are our app state. Remember, our app state is a list of strings, a list of conditions. And here I'm just going to put return empty, okay, so that we can save it. And now we can go back here and take a look at our custom function. Now this custom function I'm going to call query builder, okay, because that's exactly what it's doing. It's taking a list of conditions from the app state and it's building a query. So I'm going to hit save here, okay. And now we need to write the actual function for us. So now here I use ChatGPT to write me this function, and the result is it works really, really well, okay? And so I've copied that function, I'm gonna paste it in here, and I'm gonna hit save, okay? And so now we have a query builder whose purpose in life is to take a list of conditions and convert them to a query string that our Supabase will understand, okay? And before you actually run your app, one interesting thing that you can do is you can go to test function and you can actually test it out. So let's say your first condition is just like what we have, condition new equals. Another condition is condition used equals, and one final condition is, let's say, source amazon.com equals to, okay? And now you can run a test and see the resulting query string. So we're going to hit run and see what it generates. And it should generate a completely valid query string. And that's exactly what it's doing. You see, it's creating an OR condition anytime we have two conditions by the same name, because that's exactly what we need to do, just like how I explained earlier. And then anytime you have a condition, by another name, and it's the only one, there are no other ones, that becomes an AND condition. It essentially ANDs them together, okay? Now, let's say we have another source, and let's say this is amazon.de Germany equals to, and if we run it, it's going to create or here, and it's going to AND them together. Okay, and this is exactly what it did. It had created two OR conditions and it ANDed them together, and that gives you a filter. It's a dynamic filter that we can use, as you're going to see in just a second. Now, a quick note for all my amazing Patreon subscribers: not only will you be able to clone this app that I have here, I'm also going to give you my ChatGPT conversation so that you can see how I generated this function, the prompts that I used, etc., etc. All right, so now that I know that the function does exactly what I wanted it to do, I'm going to pass that function. I'm going to be using that function to create the query string for our API call. So I'm going to click on edit here. And so I'm going to set a variable. I'm going to say query. And here I'm going to be passing my query builder, right? So I'm going to say query builder. And to query builder, we're going to be passing our app state, confirm. And when query builder gets our app state, it's going to generate the query string. And that's going to be the result here. We're going to say confirm, okay? And so now let's go ahead and run our app and see what happens. All right, so here's our app. And as you can see, by default, these two are selected. So if I deselect them, okay, so now they're deselected. If I select just the new, you see it says condition new, and this automatically only displays the new ones, right? These are new, A, D, and G. If we go back here, we can see that A, D, and G, and they are new, right? Right here, right? A, D, and G, new, new, and new. So as you can see, the filter works beautifully. And if I select used, it doesn't OR. So now it's displaying A, B, D, G. And I believe there are some refurbished ones. So if I add refurbished, it's going to be displaying all of them. Okay, so let's go ahead and add refurbished as well. Click here. Let's go ahead and duplicate it. Okay, let's go ahead and change this to display refurbished. Okay, and now what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're actually setting the right thing. So this should be refurbished, and toggled off, this should remove refurbished. Okay, let's go ahead and reload this. All right, so check this out. Let's say I deselect all of that and I select refurbished. Okay, so now it's only showing refurbished. That's CF, product C, F, and I. Okay, so if we go back here to our Supabase, C, F, and I. So as you can see, C is refurbished, F is refurbished, and I is refurbished. And now let's go back and select used, and it's going to be displaying the other ones. New, and it's displaying the other ones. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that amazing? This is exactly what we wanted. And you can obviously deselect it, and as a result, it's only going to be displaying only the specific ones. So I can do new and refurbished, new, used, and refurbished. Let's go ahead and add another filter here, okay? Let's see how multiple filters work. It needs to add them together. So we're going to go back to our app. We're going to select this container and we're going to duplicate it. Okay, so now we have another container here, another filter. And before I do that, I want to make sure that this second column here is properly aligned. All right, so now it's perfectly aligned here. And let's go ahead and work on this filter here. So what kind of filter do we want to create? Well, let's go ahead and create something with the data that we have. Okay, so if we take a look here, we have form factors. So we have small, medium, large. Let's go ahead and create another filter on form factor. Okay, so come back here and let's do small here. Let's do medium and let's do large. Okay, let's go ahead and fix that up. Open it right here. This should be small, I believe. Did we start with small? Yeah, small is first. Small, let's go ahead and copy that. Come back here, paste that, and just do the same thing for medium. This is medium and medium. And let's do it for large as well. Okay, and now we have this new filter. And let's go ahead and see if it works in conjunction with the other filter. So here's what we have. Let's go ahead and uncheck this, and we're going to fix this behavior. Okay, so let's say I only want new. Now we have new, new, and used. And let's go ahead and see how this works. Let's say I only want small. Okay, actually we made a small mistake. We forgot to change the type of field that we're dealing with. So if we open this up, see it says condition. This should be form factor. In fact, just copy this right here and change that. Okay, quick oversight, minor oversight. Come back here, open this up, paste that there, and do the same thing. Paste that there, paste that there. Let's go ahead and reload our app. All right, so now we have this filter and we have this filter. So this is the condition and this is the form factor. Let's go ahead and see how it works. New, used, there we have it. Let's say ends. And let's say we deselect that, let's say small. And now we're only displaying new, used, and small, ADG. Let's double check if that's correct. It should be new, right, and used, right? We come back here, we have D and G, D and G. So small and small. And here we also have used, new and new here, D and G here. All right, so now that we have an app where we have two filters here. Another thing that I want to do is I want to be able to create a filter where you can specify some field and you want to search for, let's say the minimum is 10, but the maximum is something else. Okay, so how exactly will we do that? Well, if you want to create this kind of filter, this is going to be a filter where you want to do an and, right? It's not going to be an or. You want to do an and. You want to say that, a product where, that's greater than 10 and less than a certain amount. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Come back to our FlutterFlow and let's go ahead and duplicate this this thing here, this container, to create another filter. Okay, so here we are going to be getting a value. Okay, so how do we have it here? Well, we have it in input, minimum, and maximum. That is exactly what we're going to be doing. So we're going to delete this. This is our third container. In fact, we can just say container 3 and we can rename this container 2 and this is container 1. Okay, and so now what we can do is we can remove these tiles here, and inside we're gonna be having a row, and inside of this row we're gonna have the fields, right? So we're gonna have this input field here, and we're gonna have a text field. And so this is the input field, this is the text field, and what we want to do is we want to duplicate this row, and this is going to be our minimum and our maximum. So we're gonna say this is our minimum, and this is maximum. Okay, what exactly does it say? Yeah, minimum, maximum here. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And let's go ahead and, well, first, let's go ahead and change this thing here to, what do we want to do? Well, let's go ahead and try the outline. Outline is nice. Okay, maybe we'll keep outline. And let's go ahead and let's just call it, let's keep it simple, min. Okay, and that's what we have. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of padding for this container. Okay, in fact, we can do a padding for the column, something like this. Okay, that looks better. That looks cleaner. And let's go ahead and change this. Okay, that looks clean now. And for this, what do we want to do? Well, if this field is set, we want to set that filter. Okay, so we're going to add an action. I'm going to open this, and on change, we want to do the correct app state manipulation. For that, I'm just going to come back here, copy this, come back here, open this, and paste it here. Okay, so what do we want to do? Well, this is now the price. And so here we need to calculate it dynamically. Okay, so we're going to come here and we're going to do combine text. And so we're going to say price. Here, we're going to list the actual price, and this is going to be greater than, right? So GT for greater than. And so this thing here is going to be the price. So I'm going to remove that, and that way we can get it automatically. Okay, so we can get it from the widget state. Okay, this thing here. Okay, so now we have this value here, and we can also copy it. Copy this variable so that we can use it in the second situation. And here we're going to say add to list, paste it in here, copy this whole thing, and do the same thing for this one right here. Open this here, paste the action, and now we have this combination. But in this case, we want it to be LT, which is less than, and the second field. Let's go ahead and rename our fields so it's a little easier to track. In fact, I don't need, well, I'm going to say input min, and this is going to be input max. Okay, and let's go ahead and remove that. Just going to have it empty. Okay, remove that there. Okay, so now we have this input here and input there. Okay, let's go ahead and make sure that it is correctly set. And I also had ChatGPT modify the function for me. So we're going to copy this function here, and we're going to paste it in. Go ahead and compile this function here. All right, function looks good. And let's go ahead and take a look and see what's happening here. So the idea here is when we input something, it should also filter it by the values that we have here. This is going to be the minimum because we are adding this text combination here, this GT, which is greater than, right? We want it to be greater than, and we want it to be less than, right? You hear that end there, right? It's not going to be or in this case because now we have that end condition. All right, so let's go ahead and double check the app before you run it. And as you can see, for this input min, we have it unchanged, but this input max, we have it on submit. So you want to make sure that it's unchanged everywhere, okay? So we're going to come here, we're going to open this up, and we want to make sure that it's unchanged. So we're going to cut this, come back here and paste it in here. Okay, so what it's doing is it's adding a LT filter, right? We want to make sure that the max is an LT filter, which means less than. Okay, so input max less than, confirm. All right, now it looks good. Now this input min, open it up, it's unchanged, and the filter that we're using is GT, which is greater than, input min greater than. All right, looks good. It looks good to me. And let's go ahead and reload our app. All right, here's our app, and the second column is the price column. So if you take a look here, you will see this is the price column right here. We need to have the headers there. We're going to do that later. So these are the prices. So let's say the minimal price I want to see is 150. Or maybe even 200. So I don't want to see any hundreds here. So I'm going to put 200s here, and that will automatically reflect it. So as you can see, we now have the filter, and we don't see any hundreds anymore. Okay. And let's say the maximum I want is 400. Okay. So I don't want to see these two here. So I'm going to put 400, and you wait a little bit for the thing to update, and those two go away. Okay. So now we have this filter working perfectly. And obviously we still have these other filters, right? So if I only want new, I can click here and that adds it. Now we only see one product, and I can do the same thing for small, medium, large. Let's say I only want small, and there's the small product. And so product D is the only one that's left, right? It's new, it's small, and it's between these two price points. Okay, so if we look at our database, we have product D, which is this product here. Okay, so it's new, it's 250, and it's small. And so as you can see, the filters are working really, really well. Now, there's one issue here. If I delete this filter, I wanted to remove this filter, okay? It's not removing the filter, it's adding an empty filter. And so we need to have a special condition that when you change a filter and that filter is empty, we need to remove that filter, just like how we do it with the other conditions. Here we are only adding. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a conditional, and I'm gonna make it first. And I'm gonna cut this, and I'm gonna say true. And so what is true? Well, the fact that we have something in the field, okay? And so here we're going to have a single condition, and we're going to say that widget state of this input min is actually, it has something in there, okay? So what we can say is it's actually is set and not empty, okay? So if it's is set and not empty, then go ahead and add to list. Otherwise, we want it to remove from the list if it's empty. I'm going to paste this here, and we want it to remove. But before we do that, I want to copy this variable so that, because it's the same variable, remove from list, and we're going to paste this variable here. And when we are removing this value, we want to make sure that we keep track of the original value that we had, because here we are removing the current value, but we need to remove the old value. And so in this case, what we need to do is we also need to create page state so that we can track of these minimal and maximum values, okay, before we change it, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple of variables here. I'm going to say min value, this is an integer, and I'm going to add max value. Okay, and initially we are going to set them at 0 because that's what they are initially. Okay, hit save. And then what we're going to be doing is when we are going to be working with these values, we're going to be looking at the original value when we are removing it. When we add it, it's okay. But when we remove it, we need to make sure that we have the old value. And so when we add the value, we want to store it, and that way we can remove it. Okay, so I'm going to say page state here, update page state, and I want to do, this is our input min. I'm going to set the value, and this is going to be the widget state, right? The value that we inputted, okay? And here, we need to remove that value, okay? Because when the user enters it, it's going to be 0 or something else, right? If for this thing to work, it's going to be empty, but we need to remember the old value, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go to page state, and we're going to pick up this min value. And so that should refresh it. Okay, that should refresh it because we're also tracking the value. When we are removing, we're not removing the currently entered value. We are removing the original value, okay? Which is why we're using this page state here, okay? Let's go ahead and reload our app and see if this logic now works. All right, so let's say we are looking at minimum of 300. Okay, so far so good. And now if you remove it, we should remove that 300 as well. You see, it's gone now. Okay, so this logic works perfectly, and we can clear it. And that is something, as I talked about, that we couldn't have done it with these built-in filters. Okay, so now let's do the same thing for maximum as well. So we're gonna come back here, open this up, and we need to create a condition as well. So we're gonna come in here, add a conditional, move the condition up on top, and the condition is gonna be if it's not set, right? So this is going to be our widget state, input max, and we're gonna say is set and not empty. Then go ahead and do your logic, cut, and we want to copy it, paste it here, and here you want to save that page state variable so that we can remove it later. Update page state, maximum, set, and this is going to be the widget input max here, and that way when we do it here, we're not getting the currently inputted value, we're getting from the page state. Okay, so this looks good. Is set not empty, we are adding, and here we need to remove it. Okay, so I'm gonna copy this, I'm gonna do remove from list, and because it removes the values, we need to make sure that we copy it, and this is from page state. Okay, all right, and we set the value to input max. This is max. Okay, let's go ahead and reload the app, and that should clear the upper bound as well. All right, and here's our app, and here are the prices. Let's say I want 300 minimum. It goes goes ahead and creates this, and now we're seeing this, and let's say I want 450 maximum, so I should see only one now, this one right here. And let's say I remove this, that should remove the filter, hopefully, which it did. Now we're seeing all of them. And if I delete that, same thing here, removes this filter and recalculates everything. Okay, so isn't that beautiful? We have these filters, we also have these filters here. It's really, really amazing. And obviously you can add more filters if you want. It's just a question of getting that function right, and you can use ChatGPT for that. All right, let's go ahead and fix this thing here. It's a little messy, it's kind of driving me crazy. Let's first add some headers and fix these columns. Okay, let's go back here and let's add a column here for this list view. Okay, so this is our row here. Let's add another row above it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a row here. Okay, so now we have a row. We have this thing, but we're going to remove this thing here. Let's go ahead and display the headers here. Okay, so I'm going to add a bunch of text, and let's say this here. And the thing about it, there's some padding here, right? There's some padding, and I believe the padding we're using is 150. So we can do the same thing here, 150. Okay, and let's go ahead and define these values. This is price dollars per capacity, gigabytes. This is price, this is capacity. All right, let's go ahead and reload our app, see how it looks now. All right, so now we have this header row here. It's still a little messy, and that is because these values are not formatted correctly. Let's go ahead and fix that. Now we can't format it directly because this is a JSON path, so FlutterFlow does not know if this is an integer or a string or anything else, so we need to cast it. We're gonna copy this here, come back here, and what we need to do is we need to have a code expression that takes the value and converts it into a double. So we're going to create a code expression here, and it's going to take a string and it's going to convert it into a double. And after it's converted, we can do a lot of interesting formatting for it, okay? And for the value, we're going to paste the value that we have, this JSON path. This is a string by default, and we can take this value here, and once we take that string, we can convert it to a double. Okay, so we're going to be using this function here, this double try parse, and the value is this var1, right? So var1, here we need to change it to a double. All right, it says no errors, confirm. And now what we can do is we can format it, right? So we can have any kind of format that we want. We can do custom, and let's take a look at our custom. So we can do something like this here and paste it in there, and now that's going to be doing this nice formatting there. And we can also format it as a currency as well if you want, right? Because this is price per gig, confirm. Okay, and how nice is this? And for this price, we can do the same thing. We can just copy that, come back here, paste variable, okay? And remember, we need to change it, right? So this is not price per capacity, this is just price here, and everything is the same. Everything is exactly the same, and we're still we're doing it display as currency. Okay, let's see if that looks as we wanted it to look. Let's go ahead and reload our app. All right, and that looks a lot better. As you can see now, it's gigabytes, it's all nicely aligned. It's still a little messy here because of this, but it looks a lot better. Now, one last thing that you can do to make it look even better is that you can give it a fixed width, and you can do that by removing the padding and putting it inside of a container or a card. So here we're going to remove this padding because we just had that for demonstration purposes only so that we can see the content. But to make it really nice, what we can do is we can come here and we can remove all this, and what you want to do is you want to put it inside of something like a container. So we're going to wrap this inside of a container here, and then on the container you can control the width, you can control the height. So let's say the width is 200, something like this, and you can do the same thing. And now, as you can see, once you reload the app, it's nicely aligned, okay? Because the container is really, really good for giving it the exact kind of, width and the exact height, okay? So we can do that for the other text fields here. So I'm going to wrap it inside of a container here, and let's go ahead and set it. So what do we have? 200. Let's do 150, and let's do 150 here, 150 here, 150 here, and do the same thing for the headers. Remove the padding. Okay, so what are we using? 150 for the width. We need to remove the padding. And last one, make sure we remove the padding. Okay, looks good. Let's go ahead and reload this. All right, and there you have it. So as you can see, it's now perfectly aligned. The only thing that we have is the name, right? So for the name column, we can give it a larger width, okay? And that's still gonna keep everything aligned. So if we come back here for the name, this thing here, this container here, let's say we do 250, something like this. And then for the text, you can also control it at the text level, maximum characters allowed. Let's say you only want to allow 200 and you want to do ellipsis. Let's see how that looks. All right, so now as you can see, it's filling up the rest of the field that we give it, the area, and you can always shorten it more. So if you go to the text, you can do, let's say, I don't know, 75 characters, right? How many characters you think should be enough to make it look good? All right, so something like this. As you can see, it's filling up the rest of its space, and we have the ellipsis here, and it's all perfectly aligned. And obviously you can pad it, you can give it more space, you can pad this here, that here. But the most important thing is that we have this powerful dynamic filtering, okay? So we can only display, let's say, new. Okay, so then there you see the filter. We need to remove that, which I'm going to do in a second. And we can also do something here, right, with this form factor, display small. Okay, now it's displaying small as well. And we can remove new, and I can do the same thing with the price as well. So let's say I want at least from 250 and up. That's going to remove this thing here, that is gone, and I want from 300 maximum. That's going to remove this thing here. Okay, so obviously you can add more filters, you can play around, and most importantly, you can use this technique in some of your other apps as well. I mean, you got to admit, this is really, really nice. It's amazing how it works. It's not a pretty website, but it's very, very functional. It's an awesome website. So if you want to build websites like this, if you want to implement this functionality in your apps, then you definitely need to be able to clone this app, or at least view this app to see how I did it, so that you can, play around with it, test different things, test different use cases, or just learn this new technique that you may not have even thought that you needed, right? Maybe you didn't even realize that, filtering is tough, filtering is not easy, but that is how you filter. You gotta use dynamic techniques, dynamic filtering, and this is the way that you do it. And if that's what you want to do, then you definitely need to join our amazing Patreon community, because when you become a member of our rapidly growing Patreon community, you're going to be getting access to not only this app, right? We're talking about viewing and cloning this app. You're going to have full ability to do anything that you want with this app, and, modify it, adapt it, just learn from it, whatever you want. But you also get access to all my other apps that I have on this channel. Every single app that I've done on this channel is available from my Patreon page. But that's not all. You're going to get access to more content. You're going to get access to things such as Q&A, live streams, behind the scenes content, as well as our Patreon supported masterclass series, where I do deep dives of important topics, of key apps, key tools that a lot of people in the community really, really like, and they want to understand better. And additionally, I'm going to be doing a big Q&A later this week or early next week. It's a huge Q&A, so if you have any questions, you're stuck on something, join our Patreon, ask your question, and I'm going to be covering every single question. I'm going to be covering every single question that you guys have. They're all going to be covered. Plus, we have a super amazing community over there that you're definitely going to love. It's going to help you with no code, and you're just going to have a lot of fun learning from others, sharing techniques with others. There's some awesome people there, and everybody is eager to learn. And above and beyond that, when you join our amazing Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work, and that is greatly, greatly appreciated. So if you've got any amount of value from these tutorials, from these videos, maybe you've learned something new, or maybe you realized something that you can do that you didn't know that you could do before, or maybe you're looking to, build that, next amazing app, or a complex app, or a simple app, or just, learn something new, right? Maybe you're just interested in no code, you want to learn something new, then you're definitely going to get a lot more value inside of our amazing Patreon community, as opposed to not being a member. And so if any of that sounds like something that you're going to be interested in, then I definitely urge you to check out our amazing Patreon community and consider becoming a member.